Hello and welcome to the Vocal Sound Healing Podcast. My name is Alexandra Rigazzi-Tarling. I'm a vocal coach and technician and a vocal sound healing practitioner and trainer. I've been working with voice for well over 25 years as a former opera singer, and I've been training vocal sound healers for about the last 10 years. And I bring everything voice, vocal sound healing to this podcast for discussion. So thank you for joining me this week. And this is episode 10, and we're looking at sounding for silence and regulation, which might seem like a contradiction because we have either silence or sound. And what do we even mean by silence? Do we mean dead quiet, no other noise at all? And yes, I think in an ideal world, that would be the type of silence we'd be going for. But unless you live in the middle of the countryside, it's not really possible. And then even, in that silence, you might still be aware of the hum of the fridge or some other electrical equipment around you. So really, with silence, what we're talking about is our inner space, our inner sanctuary, that inner place where we're allowed or guided to tune into ourselves and how we're really feeling. And that might be physically, emotionally, and the rest. So when we talk about that, we mean all of it, the things that have happened in the past, the things that are going on in the present, and our projections into our perceived future. And in that silence, that quiet space, we find all of those things. We really get in touch with who we are. And last week, I talked about in the podcast, I discussed resensitizing for healing, building an awareness of our feelings and actually the subtlety of our feelings, the subtlety of our body's signals, so that we can truly listen and be in touch with our natural intelligence, the body's natural intelligence, what the body is showing us. And through this, we begin to connect with the language of intuition. And so, if you already work as a healer, you may well be used to using your intuition for your clients. But first, we need to be using it for ourselves to really hear and tune into that small voice of guidance, in whichever way that is for you, but to really discern this from the ego, from that sense of conditioning, the conditioned path, from all the things that we feel we should do, we shouldn't do, all those voices in our head that are telling us what to do in our lives. So, actually discerning what is ours, what is our energy, what is our inner voice in that quiet space, and what is really the energy of others and what we might be in training to is a really important part of this. It's an important part of this going to the silence and the regulation that occurs as a result of it. And I think as healers, and particularly vocal sound healers, when we can listen to ourselves in that way, when we can really get to know that deeper part of our own reality, our own being, our own body, this helps us listen to our clients and their energy rather than applying a one size fits all approach to healing because everybody is different. Every energy field is different. There isn't a one size fits all approach. So it's only when we start to access that silence and that deepened space within ourselves that we can really listen and truly hear and understand what's going on. And it might well be that it's not what we expect, and we might not understand what our body is trying to tell us straight away. And this is the same for when we're working with clients as well. It's really understanding and listening to those signals and those signs. But if we're used to doing it within ourselves and understanding our own language of intuition, that will give us a heightened sense around others. And again, it's all about the practice of going into the silence. Because if we can practice going there regularly, then we can listen and tune in more often. And it's the practice and that tuning into what is within us that helps us connect with who we are. So that could be everything from our fears, our joys, our insecurities, everything we hold in that space that we might not want others to see, everything we hold within us. And, maybe that space is too hard for us to exist in at first, which is why we might avoid going to the silence, why we might avoid going to that deeper place within. Because, the silence can be triggering. Because if what the body is telling us, if the body is showing us a result of things that have happened to us, it might not feel so good. And the body's trying to communicate this lack of balance, this lack of coherence, and this dis-ease. So, when we go into the silence, we meet our nervous system. And sometimes it lets us in, and other times it might be so dysregulated that we can't enter in to hear what we need. And then, what does this guidance, when we get into the silence and we're listening to that inner voice, that inner world, what does that guidance, that inner voice even sound like? And of course, that's going to depend on what the silent space looks and feels like. Because there might be a lot of simple practice to be done, a lot of visiting that quieter space, dedication to that practice, and really waiting, listening, sitting with whatever's there, returning, and then trying again. And that might all need to happen before anything starts to feel like a communication being made or a shift. And before you start to feel the echoes of this work in your daily life. Because that's the thing, it's like vocal practice. When we're, working with the voice, we make all sorts of funny noises and sounds, in our practice sessions. And we do that to reach these deeper muscles and ligaments that support the voice. And we have to make these other sounds, these often, that sound like funny sounds, childlike sounds, noises, to reach areas that we can't usually reach within the plain speech that we use from day to day. The speech is this sort of monotonous tone, and we have to use so many other sounds and practices to really get into what's going on behind the scenes of the voice. And, as we continue these sounds and this regular practice, what we don't realise is these muscles, whatever needs to be done, are unwinding, are strengthening, are building stamina, and so on. And then one day we open our mouth to sound or to sing or whatever it might be, and the penny drops. Something happens, and you go, "Oh, that sounds different. That sounds more resonant. That sounds more free," whatever it might be. And what's happened is all of that practice, all of those sessions where you were making those funny noises. I mean, it's like my vocal conditioning class on a Wednesday. I get the group making all sorts of funny sounds, and they trust that these sounds are working the muscles and ligaments in a positive way, and we trust this practice and this process. And then one day it just drops and it finds its way into our sound, into our voice on its own. And it was this program, I said, working behind the scenes, activated by your commitment and your choice to practice. And so going regularly into the silence, regularly into this deep listening space within, might not give us an immediate light bulb moment or hear, a voice that tells you exactly what you need to know. But it will start to gradually inform our daily existence. It will make us more sensitive to our responses, to our feelings, our actions, our interactions. And through this sensitivity, if grounded, if stable, we will start to feel different. We start to operate from a different place. And that begins a new pathway through our existence, one where we are in communion with that inner voice, that inner world, our intuition. And then we have a choice to follow it or not. So, how does sound help us here? How do we sound to get into the silence? And I'm going to sound like a broken record, but working with vocal sound, gentle humming, gentle vowel sounding, away from singing, away from genre, away from, all of that, back to gentle sounding for vibration. This allows us to access our inner world. And you might also choose to sound mantra or chant, but actually simple humming, simple vowel sounding is an incredibly powerful thing to do. And most importantly, what it does is it shifts the body, or at least begins to shift the body, into a parasympathetic state. It shifts the nervous system into rest and digest. So the shift is going to be different for each of us because it will depend on your current state in terms of your nervous system and where you spend the majority of your time within your window of tolerance. So we talked about Siegel's window of tolerance a few episodes back. And, if you're in this middle window all the time and your nervous system is fluctuating, you've got good vagal tone and it's, you're used to switching on the stress, switching it back off to relax and using stress to mobilize, coming back to relaxation and so on. If you're used to that, you're going to be in a different place from someone who is stuck up in above the window of tolerance in a super stress mode, or someone that's the other way in freeze response. And we're all different, so there's no judgment either way. We're all coming from a different place. But humming and vocal sounding will begin to shift your nervous system state in whichever way. It will help to regulate the nervous system because the humming meets us where we are at, wherever you're at in that state in the nervous system. It will stimulate the vagus nerve at the point of the larynx, the vocal folds, the pharynx. So much going on in the throat in terms of the vagus nerve. It will stimulate your diaphragm through the breath, through the belly breathing. And this is just the beginning. This gentle vibration of the vagus nerve with intentional humming will begin the process of entering into the silent space and giving you something to do. So that act of consciously sounding, humming, vocal toning, allows you to settle into something safe. So there is sound, not just silence. There is a feeling of control in the doing of something. So in this case, in the sounding, which allows us to explore the silence, the inner world, but with a tether to the outer world. So we won't get lost in that inner world. We'll be able to stand it, we'll be able to be there, whatever's going on there, because we can still connect with the outer vibration of the sound, that tether to the outer world. And this sense of safety is really important when you begin to go within, especially if you've experienced trauma that's caused you to dissociate and you have a fear of reconnecting with your body and of facing, what you might be holding in there. You might never have met that. So your vocal sound maintains that connection to the outer world while we begin to explore within. And this is a practice you can do for yourself. You can take that awareness in and just work with this simple humming a few times a week, every day, 10 minutes a day, whatever is right for you. But this can also be explored within a vocal sound healing session. And within the session, so for example, if you come to me for a vocal sound healing session, I will offer that sound to you. I might get you doing a little bit of humming at the beginning and at the end, but to start with, I'll always set an intention for the work based on the client's needs and situation. And then, other than being that anchor for the client in that space, holding that safety and transmitting that through my voice, I will begin to lead you into that silence without you having to do anything. So I become that anchor, I become that tether. I use my vocal sound over and around your body, and I hold that space for you. So, this is really great for people that are new to the work or people that just don't feel that they can face that inner world on their own. And it might be that you have a session where I facilitate that for you a few times, and then you work with your own voice in between to keep going to that place of silence. But every session that I facilitate, every vocal sound healing session, every sound healing session that I facilitate will involve shorter periods of silence between the sounding and then a longer, sometimes even up to 10 minutes, longer phase of silence towards the end of the session. And this silence is key because, as we've discussed, it's going to lead the client into that inner world. So there's a balance between the sound and the silence. And I create that safe space, and we build the trust together that lets them know that I'm holding that space for their highest good. I'm holding that space with the highest intention for them. And from that place and from that space, I can listen to them. I can listen to their body, the energy of their body. And I can use my voice to work through any dissonance in their energy field and help them come to a place of tuning, a place of balance in the session. So when you work with a sound healing practitioner, if you choose to go and work with someone, for this journey into the silence, for this journey into that healing inner world, what you're doing is using the practitioner as that anchor, but really to co-regulate with them. So, rather than the person having to face that inner world alone if they're not ready, the practitioner serves as that link between them and that inner silence. So, if I'm holding that space, I am remaining present. I become the tether to the outside world, whilst gently leading them to that inner world to meet their nervous system. And in some cases there might be a lot of resistance, and that's okay. That's part of the process. That's part of this journey. And my job through the vocal sounding, through holding that safe space, is to help a client to surrender the fear for that short time and safely enter as close to regulation as they can. And it's a journey, it's a process. It might be the first time that they have ever known regulation in the silence, the first time anyone has ever shown them this. So we have to remember that, if our caregivers weren't regulated, or we didn't have people around us, perhaps friends, other family members, teachers, then we missed out on that learning. So how then would we know what regulation feels like? And so my job as a sound healing practitioner is to offer that learning, that space to learn. And it happens over time. And that might not happen in one session. And as a client returns for subsequent sessions, subsequent periods of that deep silence, their nervous system starts to understand that new feeling. And it starts to understand and get used to that sense that there is a safe inner world. And then it can begin to align to that. It's aligning, it's entraining to this new frequency of stillness, of quiet. And whatever is happening on the inside, that entrainment to the quiet, to the stillness, is going to be reflected in the outer world. And that's when the changes and the shifts start to happen in our life. So, a person begins to sense the difference between this new feeling of regulation in the silence and make a comparison to the outside world when they go back into their life. This is the learning to experience the silence, to experience the safety, to experience the regulation within the sound, guided by the sound. And then to go back into their life and sense the difference between those two worlds. This is the learning. This is the sensing. This is the development. And then comes the choice. What do I want to feel? Which space do I prefer? And, it does come down to choice ultimately. A healing practitioner can only take someone so far. It's a relationship that we have that's based on an understanding that I will do my best for that person and they also take responsibility for that healing journey. So that choice for the client, there comes a point where there is that choice. It has to be made ultimately. Once a practice has been established, perhaps I've seen a client for, a few sessions, they're working with their own practice at home to really supercharge what's going on in the sessions. And, they have that personal practice set up to go into the inner space. They then have to decide if they want to continue that practice and to use the tools, to use the humming, to use the quiet time, to go to that space when they're not in a session with me, when life gets really tough, when all sorts of stuff's going on. Can they continue that practice? Can they carve out that 5-10 minutes to bring themselves back to regulation, to that silent space, through the humming, through the sound to the silence? Can they do that? Or do they choose the chaos? And, this is something we all work with. We all make these choices every day for our health, for our well-being, for our development. And, the thing is, patterns of being and conditioning in the body that have been there sometimes years since we first came into the world, these patterns are so strong that sometimes, despite all the good work that we've done, we can get drawn back into the chaos because it's what we know. And ironically, there's safety in knowing, even if it's standing in the way of something ultimately more healing and more attuned to our positive development. So that journey, has its peaks and troughs, shall we say. We can be working for ourselves, we can be working with our clients, but ultimately we have to choose that quiet space. We have to choose to listen to our body. We have to choose to activate the sound and the humming to enter into that space, to hear that deeper voice within us. And, just thinking here about vocal sound healing practitioners or sound healing practitioners, consider how you feel about silence in your sessions. Because, I advocate this in my trainings and a lot of my colleagues do as well, but I know of lots of people that have never heard of bringing silence into their sound sessions. So, what do you do? Do you bring silence into your sessions, into your sound baths, into your one-to-ones with your clients, into your voice sessions if you're a vocal sound healer? Do you practice this silent, quiet time for yourself? Because silence is so important. It provides the balance. Yes, the sound is leading us into the silence. That's number one. But it's also providing the balance. So, I've been to many sound sessions over the years, both one-to-one and in groups, with usually sound baths in groups. And I've just felt completely overwhelmed with the sound, completely bombarded. And I come away feeling like my defenses are up, that I need to protect myself. I'm the type of person that if anything is out of balance energetically, I start to feel a sort of feeling like motion sickness. And I'll come away just feeling like, oh, it was too much. So, of course, if you're not used to working with silence and you decide you're going to bring this into your sessions, you need to let people know, whether that's one-to-one or in a group setup. You need to tell people what to expect so they know that they're going to be guided into this silence and that maybe the sound will continue after that. Maybe they'll be grounded towards the end of the session, whatever it might be. But you need to guide people, you need to let them know because people aren't used to silence in this day and age. It's not something that, we expect. So if you bring it in, when I'd highly encourage you to do that, let people know, tell them what's going to happen. Because as well, some people go into that silence and there's a feeling of boredom comes. And, if we're listening to our body and our body's signals, what is that feeling of boredom? That feeling of boredom is resistance. It's sort of bouncing off, entering into that space. As a practitioner, as a sound healing practitioner, if you have found that space for yourself before a session, and if you're operating from that regulated place of that deeper awareness, whether from your one-to-one sessions, whether for your group sessions, you won't need or feel the need to oversound or bombard with endless, minutes of improvised sounding, whatever it might be, voice, bowls, gongs, whatever it might be, because you'll be operating from that place of safety and security within your own nervous system. And so we allow each sound to land, to fade. We trust in that because we're not there to perform to people. We're not there to please people. We're not worrying if we've done enough sound or if we've got enough instruments or all of that. What we're doing, we're coming from a deeper place of knowing. We're there to help people find balance, to find that silence, to find regulation. And so healing, that's the sound healing, in a world that is really far removed from that right now. So, it's not actually about you. It's not about how good your voice is, how nice it sounds, how many instruments you have, about your need to be there to offer that sound. It's about offering that deep space of gentle connection to the silence via the sound. That's the intention for people's highest good. And all their bodies are different. So we have to say for the highest good, because how can we possibly control all of that energy movement in the room and in their body? All we can do is set that intention and hold that safe space, that balance of sound to silence and so on. And that space is something far removed from this stressful and busy world. And it is in that space that people find the healing. And you don't have to worry about what people think. They'll know because they'll feel it. They will feel that healing if you offer it from that place of regulation. So, we're bringing it back to gentle, simple, healing intention, sound, silence. It's about listening to the silence in the space as you sound, listening to the sound reverberating in the ether, If you listen as you sound, it's a two-way process within you of giving and receiving. You step into balance because you are offering and listening. The two processes are happening together. So, even when you're at home and you're doing your practice, your humming practice, your 10 minutes practice, whatever it might be, maybe 20 minutes practice, even when you're working with your humming practice, can you hear the silence around you? Can you hear the silence more than the humming? If you can, then you're on the right track. If you're bombarding your voice and your body with that humming, trying to make a better sound, a richer sound, or whatever sound it might be, then you're missing the point a little bit. You're bringing it back to the listening, sounding and listening. Use the sound to guide you to that deeper space of listening, to that quiet, to that vibration, to that regulation as a result. Because, remember, when you sound, you're moving matter in your body. And when you move matter in your body, this has to be processed. And the silence helps with that processing. So using your vocal sound, gently breathing, gently approaching your body with kindness and calm, gentleness, and listening into the silence, and see what you find, and see how this overlaps into your daily life, and see what happens. And maybe let me know, because I love hearing about this. I love it. I love it all. So I hope that was helpful in some way, folks. I appreciate you being with me and giving me your time and listening. I hope that's offered something to you, to your clients, to your work, whatever it is you're out there doing. And do like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube and Spotify, then you get a little alert when the next episode comes up. But again, thank you for being with me, and I look forward to sharing this space with you again soon. So take good care, folks, and see you soon. Bye for now.